48-hour art check, round 104. All right, we are back. So, trying to decide what to do here, and I think what I'm actually going to do is Josh seems to have the plague or is completely out of commission. Like each time, he just seems to get sicker. Poor guy. So he's really not able to like jump on with us right now. So what I was thinking is I'll still do an art check, and I'm going to get with him and kind of see how he's feeling. We might take the rest of this week off just because, just to give him kind of a chance to rest up. He doesn't need more things to deal with or whatever. But I'm going to do the art check, and we'll kind of go from there. So we'll see how you could. I'm going to test this out. I'm going to see, and I have a topic that I want to talk about, so we'll kind of see how that goes. But yeah. So we'll see how you might do this solo. I don't know, to your audience rather than to like a partner, like a buddy that you're being accountable with. So I printed these off, so let me get some visuals for my things. Got Tim and Squatchy Ink in the chat, so maybe you guys will jump in on the topic with me so that I'm not just talking to myself here. Let's see here. All right, so okay, so as far as progress goes, I printed all the pages. I don't know if you can really see them because they're like blue line or whatever, but yeah, you can kind of see them. So I basically got, like all these, and I'm ready to ink. It's been kind of crazy with sick kids, and they've actually shut down some of the schools and stuff. I guess I'll get to that in the challenges part. But so anyway, so I've got all 4 pages done. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. Oh crap! Okay, did I break anything? No, didn't break anything. We are live. This is a live show. Oh, I did. I broke my holder. All right, well, that's why we have sandbags, I suppose. So let me just show you this. This is great. All right, this one is what I'm talking about. So what I failed to realize is I had left this to do later, and so I had to do it now. So these are like cameos, like old school brooches. And so each one now has a border, is framed by something that is related to the character. So this is like pearls, gold, and harpoon heads for Ahab. And then we've got like fruit and food and leaves for our Seder cook. And then we've got parts of the Adam and Eve story for Lilitu, which is a form of Lilith. So we've got the snake. She also has the ability to kind of shoot lightning style things, and there's a tree there. Metal work for the dwarf. Rope for the drogers because of the harpooning. Thread for the brownies and silkies. And then for our sirens, we've got kind of a feather wreath. So anyway, so that was some stuff that I did. Now I get to do the rest of this by holding it, which will be fun. I am actually going to switch. So let's switch over like this so you guys have something slightly more interesting to look at. And now I'm going to jump into... What am I going to jump into? Yeah, let's jump into kind of a section of Illo Talk. We'll do some double duty here.
This is Illo Talk.
All right, so anyway, will do this by myself. But what I'm kind of thinking is I've been reading up a little bit more, and if you guys have seen some of the work that I've done, as far as some of the stickers and stuff that I'm doing, I'm like revisiting some of those concepts because I'm trying to get ready for the sticker stint that I'll be doing starting February 14th. If you guys want to do that with me, you can always go to stickerstint.com. No, that doesn't exist. You can go to corykerr.com/stickerstint. And I just realized I'm not talking into the microphone. So I was looking at artificial intelligence, which is one of the topics that I was kind of going after with the do things robots can't and kind of what you bring to the table as a creator. And I read an article in Wired that was super interesting, talking about how we've gotten the artificial part down in artificial intelligence, but it's not that intelligent. And they were giving a bunch of different examples. There's also some people that are on Joe Rogan that were kind of talking about artificial intelligence. And so I'm just going to riff on that for a minute because I think it's significant and important for creators. So here are some things that are kind of going on right now. The game Breakout, where you have like the little bricks and you bounce the ball around and it breaks the bricks, right? Most human beings are able to kind of figure that out relatively quickly, right? You kind of figure out the game mechanics and how it works. And so they were really excited when they figured out that you can take, there's got to be a better way to hold this thing. That's fine. That they're teaching artificial intelligence how to do it. And so they didn't teach they didn't teach the computer anything about the game, right? They didn't tell it the rules or whatever. They just watched. The computer just played the game, right? Without having anything explained to it or whatever. And the interesting thing is that it played the game and it recognized kind of what was going on. It understood the rules of the game and it began to do kind of human type behavior. Like it began to kind of optimize its gameplay, where you'd break like one column and then send the ball up that column and it would kind of bounce along the top, right? And I remember doing that as a kid. And so they were really excited. And then they said, I wonder what happens when they would take something and change it. And so they moved the paddle just slightly higher, right? Just slightly higher. Or they would they'd make the middle part of the bricks be hard in a different color. And as soon as they made a minor change, a human being would look at that and they would say, oh, right, minor change. I can calculate for this because I understand the game. I understand the rules. And they would make this. But what happened is when they raised the paddle slightly, the AI just completely had no idea what to do. And the interesting about it is it didn't know what to do because it hadn't learned the game and it doesn't know how to think. All it learned was the pattern. And so they're talking about this idea of pattern recognition software, right? And whereas one of my concepts with do things that robots can't is be a human being, right? Do the type of things that human beings can do that robots can't do. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that if you are doing something that is super repetitive, if you're doing something that is a pattern that can easily be learned by a machine, then you're not preparing yourself for, like AI to kind of replace a huge portion of the workforce, right? And so you can teach, like I've been to Adobe Max, and they have a thing called Adobe Sensei, which is kind of their catch-all term for kind of their deep learning. Now, deep learning is a really interesting concept. Deep learning is this idea where you throw a ton of stuff, a ton of information at something, and it looks for patterns in that information. The problem is that it can't reason, and it doesn't have any empathy, and so it can detect patterns, but it becomes really difficult. So, for example, another example in the article that or the series of articles that I've been reading, you and I may never have seen a specific type of cat. Like, let's say that you've never seen a Siamese cat, but you've seen a lot of other types of cats. I don't know cats well, but anyway, you've seen a bunch of other types of cats. So when you see a Siamese cat, you go, that is a cat, right? But where deep learning AI struggles is that it has recognized, what makes, images that are tagged as cats, right? And it begins to kind of do that. But the problem is it's super slow, right? And the speed of it happens because it takes a huge amount of information for it to recognize, oh, these are what cats look like, hundreds of thousands of images. Whereas if you have a toddler and you have one cat in your home, that toddler learns about that cat, right? Because it lives with it. It's introduced to just one cat, not a million cats, not a billion photos of cats or videos of a bunch of different types of cats. Then that toddler is introduced to another cat. It automatically transfers what it knows because it can reason and it has logic. And so there's kind of an interesting thing like that. And so there's this idea that deep learning is probably not the way to go. Now, deep learning is where you throw a bunch of information at an AI, right? A ton of information, and it recognizes patterns. There are other types of AI methods, and deep learning seems to be okay for like algorithmic style things, right? So one of the things that I find really interesting is like Netflix, for example. It watches what you watch and it watches what other people watch, and then it makes recommendations to people based on the combination of things that people watch. And so you watch something and it notices that a few thousand other people watch the same thing and this other thing. They're going to recommend that other thing to you because you watched a thing that is similar. Anyway, so they do profiles like that. But they have Napoleon Dynamite. It falls outside of their algorithm. They have found that they have almost no ability to predict what someone might like based on watching Napoleon Dynamite. So it's kind of this weird outlier, right? Like as a show, it's kind of weird, right? But as a piece of information, it's difficult for the algorithm, for the AI to be able to guess what it is that you might watch. So there are other types of things that they're doing, that they're playing with right now, that is kind of interesting. So for example, you and I can drive a car and we know what people look like. We know what deer look like. We understand like the road and things like that. And I remember reading, they're kind of trying to figure out how to do this AI thing to have the AI drive cars. And somebody asked, well, what if a deer jumps in front of you? And the guy jokingly said, if the deer walks like a person, then the car will stop because we've taught the car not to hit people. But it doesn't recognize necessarily other things. So anyway, so there's lots of kind of super interesting things along those lines. Different types of AI that aren't deep learning. There was one that was super concerning. And this one was where they take an AI and they pit it against several other AI, and the other AI are trying to deceive. So if you've got AI A, B, and C, right? And so A is the test subject that's trying to learn, and B and C are trying to deceive A. And so what they will do, B and C will go in there and they will create some things that are true. They'll use some things that are true. So they're curating information, articles and images and stuff like that from actual sources. But then they will also create their own sources. And then they will also create false information. And so you have AI that are trying to trick other AI. And what happens is you don't tell the AI what's going on. And so A has to learn to discern what is true and what is untrue. And the interesting thing about this is all three of those systems are adapting and learning as they do this. This is like horrifyingly scary. And it seems like every so often we create a situation where we don't know what's going on and we have to like shut it down. And so there's been major companies that have had two AI that are talking to each other. And then they begin sending packets back and forth, little bits of information. And they request things. There's kind of this call and response. Like, I would like 3 packets. Here are 3 packets, right? But then what happened is they started to turn those two AI towards learning language, right? And so when you have like Google Translate, for example, and it looks at something and it says, you know, the word for this in English is blue, the word for that word in Spanish is, you know, azul or what, I can't remember what it is. Anyway, but it doesn't take into account like local customs, colloquialisms, like idioms and things like that. And so it's like a direct kind of weird translate. And so it's not like a one-to-one relationship. And so they're like, let's take these AI and we'll put it at the language to try to see if it can learn the language, rather than just having people do kind of a dictionary one-to-one relationship, this equals this, because that's not how language works. So they started doing that, and the AI began to learn and then invented its own language that it was using to communicate with the other AI. And no one understood what the language was, so nobody knew what the AI was saying to each other. And so they shut it down. They're like, we don't know what you're talking about, but you're obviously passing information back and forth. But it's in a way that none of the engineers understand. So there's just weird stuff like that happening. So why am I talking about this on Illo Talk /48 Hour Art Check? Mainly it's because I think it's really important that we focus on the things that we can do, and the things that we can do as people, right? One, empathy. It is very difficult. And if you want to be kind of freaked out, go watch some of the scary AI conversations where you have AI that is learning to converse and think, and they'll do an interview and they're like, hey, you know, blah, 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 blah. They ask it a question and then it says something terrifying like, I'd like to kill all the humans or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it shows like a total lack of empathy, right? And sci-fi writers and comic book writers have been writing about this forever. Like Ultron, not the movie version of Ultron, but like the comic version of Ultron, created by Hank Pym, who's a pacifist, and he created it so that so that it would kind of be like a force for good, and he gave it like a prime directive. Its prime directive was peace on Earth, and so you would think that goes great, but what actually happened is that Ultron goes out and decides, okay, well, I'm going to find peace on Earth. And so it begins to identify the problem and then find patterns. And then it ultimately says there will be peace on Earth if there is no people. And so if I eliminate all the people, the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom seem to get along just fine. They kind of have their own like self-leveling and balancing structures that kind of help everything out. But people don't seem to do that. And so if I remove people, there'll be peace on Earth, right? That is a logical and unempathetic direction to take from kind of that thing. So there's a lot of stuff. And we joke about the Matrix and the Terminator and Skynet and all that jazz. There's all that type of stuff. We're either going to end up as batteries or we're going to end up as, like hunted by the versions of ourselves that we create. The interesting thing about this is you have engineers that are going out of their way to further this. And it always reminds me of Jurassic Park. One of the most important things that I think Jurassic Park ever did was come up with the phrase, you were so fixated on whether or not you could that you didn't think about whether or not you should, right? Whether you can do this is the only thing that a lot of these scientists and engineers are trying to figure out. The thing that's super interesting is you have like, is it Boston Dynamics? That's not right. I think that's right. Anyway, the people they're making robots that can like do parkour, they can jump over boxes, they can stand there. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that's going on, right? And if all these technologies kind of start getting a hold of each other, they're going to begin replacing major parts of the workforce. And so, why do I need a person to do something if it's a simple task or a repetitive task or a task that can be learned by understanding a series of patterns? Why do I need a person doing that if I can put a robot in there, right? And so it kind of reminds me of like the Industrial Revolution. I'm kind of going off on this tangent, but that's kind of what's going on. So it kind of reminds me of the Industrial Revolution. You had Ford Model Ts, and Ford said, what if instead of having one or two guys build a car from scratch, I line a bunch of people up and your job is to screw in bolt number 37, right? And so they moved the car to each station, and ultimately that should have been a robot, but they couldn't build robots at the time. Okay? And so there was people that would get these factory jobs. And we created this educational system that went out of its way to create people that would be okay in that situation, and on and on and on, right? And so we created an educational system that told people to sit down, shut up, do exactly what you're told, follow instructions, don't speak up, don't speak out, color inside the lines, don't go out of your way to stand up, don't be creative, do what I say, kind of follow instructions. That type of training for 12 to 15 years, and then you get out and you get a factory job. They take care of you until your body breaks down, then you get a pension, you're fine, right? Well, the world has changed to the point where those type of jobs are no longer as beneficial or available, because instead of having a guy stand there with a screw gun, I can just put that screw gun on a robot arm, and the robot arm can just do that thing for me, right? And if that is more cost effective than having a person do it, I don't need that person doing it anymore. So what we need now is we need people to think of these things, right? And so this is where it comes into artists and musicians and writers. And the things that we're doing, we are creating, right? We are not pattern recognition machines. We are social animals. We are empathetic creatures. We are people. And people reason. We have logic. We have empathy. We have love. We have emotions. We have hate. We have fear. We have joy. We have all of these things. And one of the most important things that people do is we tell each other stories. And those stories matter. And that's one of the things that I think we need to focus on, is focus on storytelling. Because if we focus on storytelling, we focus on creation, we focus on creativity, we focus on the things that we can do as people, then I think that that's hugely beneficial to those individuals, but also to the greater society, right? And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be in the next 5-10 years, or if it's going to be in the next 200 years, but at some point in time, our society is going to look drastically different. And I don't know how that's going to end up or what's going to happen after that, but drastically different. Just think about what's happened if you look at where we have come from. And in my lifetime, and I'm under 40, in my lifetime, I have seen the advent of the first video game. Giant pixels on the screen, right? With the Atari, and there's some predecessors before that, but the first one I got was Nintendo, so we had 8-bit, super good graphics for the time. And then, but if you look at 8-bit now, like it's fun because it's kind of this retro thing or whatever, but then you look at what's actually going on, you almost have photorealism, right? You're not quite there, but you will be very soon. And so in less than 4 decades, which isn't that long in the human race, right? If you think about it, like one person, half of one person's life, that's how far away we are. Half of one person's life, you have going from giant pixels to almost photorealism. I've got a buddy who's got an Oculus Rift, and I mean, you put one of those things on and you fight some zombies or some robots or whatever, and that is an immersive experience, right? And they're working on stuff like that, and it's going to continue to get better. And so the reason I bring that up is look at the advances in technology. My grandpa, who is in his 90s, like if you think about 90 years ago, that is a crazy amount of time. Radio, TV, the internet, like you used to be able to understand how to fix a car without really any training because the combustion engines were really simple. Now they're driven by computers, right? Even if you don't have a fancy car, you still have fuel injection computer that's trying to figure out how to do all that stuff. Just the technological advances in just such a short amount of time. What's going to happen in the next 10 years? I mean, I went to college not that long ago before cell phones were, cell phones existed, but nobody really had one. Like I had a beeper in high school and people thought I was a drug dealer because I had a beeper. Not really, but we joked that like people with beepers were drug dealers because it was the only people that had beepers. And I got a phone several years after that. Now everybody has a phone, right? And I remember I used to say I took a TI-86 in class, in math class. And I said, why are we learning all of this? Like this is going to get smaller and better, right? There's at some point in time, there's going to be a device that is all of the things that you need that you're just going to carry in your pocket. Okay. And then when the iPad came out, or when the iPod came out, and video is being delivered, in kind of video podcasts, and you were able to carry this thing around in your hand, that video, and then the iPhone, and then Androids, and then all this stuff. And you think about it now, it's common. It's very common that we don't even think about the magic of this piece of glass that we have in our hands, that I request anything that I want. And it takes that request and it finds a satellite in space that's orbiting around, right? Bounces through a tower, and then it sends me whatever I want, right? It's the most mind-blowing thing to me that I can draw something, and then I can put that on this piece of glass, and then it ends up on your guys' piece of glass, and that you guys draw stuff and you put it on this piece of glass, and it gets beamed down to my piece of glass from space. That's just weird to think about. But beyond that being super weird, is whatever's going to happen 5 years from now. Whatever's going to happen 10, 15, 20 years from now. I mean, by the time I am 50, by the time I'm 60, by the time I'm 70, what is the world going to be like? What is AI going to be like? What is the workforce going to be like? And what are creatives going to be like? Because right now, the system, and by the system I mean kind of the economic system, the social system, is not built for creatives. It is not built for artists. It is not built for, what it is built for is distribution, right? It's built for the machine, the bureaucrats, the distributors of creativity, but not the creators of creativity, right? It's built to distribute and monetize, but it's not built to support those that create. I think that's going to change, because distribution, once you get it set up, can be automated. Bureaucracy, for the most part, should be eliminated, and what is essential can be automated. And so the things that can be automated are going to continue to be automated. There'll be fewer and fewer people that are in charge of doing that. And the things that will be valuable will be the things that are rare. And if I can replace somebody with a computer, if I can replace them with a program, if I can replace them with a robot, if I can replace them with an AI, with an algorithm, or with whatever, what is left is rare. And what's rare is interesting, because as everyone is going towards things that are easier and things that are, that don't take any sacrifice and where you can avoid pain, then what you end up with is you end up with an easy life, right? And you have no resistance. And so those people, those artists, those musicians, those writers, those creatives that go out of their way and choose to create in spite of the difficulty, choose to hone their craft in spite of the pain and sacrifice and time that it takes, choose to learn how to tell a story in a way that connects to other people, choose to connect to other people. Those are going to be more and more rare, because it's more and more difficult and it can't be automated. Now, at some point in time, people will argue that maybe it can be automated. Maybe that, you can get and there's all these jokes. Like I had an AI watch, 1,000 hours of Hallmark Channel, and, it wrote its own script or whatever. And maybe with enough time, formulaic style storytelling, formulaic style things could be, whatever could happen. I don't know. But actual creation and actual human connection, that is still going to reside with the artists. So anyway, just some things I've been thinking about, and take from that what you will. And in the meantime, if you want to check out some of my stuff, you can always go to CoryKerr.com. And if you would like to join me on the sticker stint, then you can go to CoryKerr.com/sticker stint. That's STICKER sticker, and then stint, STINT. And check that out, because we are going to be starting February 14th and going to the end of February. And what we're going to do is we are going to create a sticker every day. And I've already got quite a few of the people that watch this show, quite a few of the people that that follow me in other channels like Instagram and Twitter, already saying that they're gonna kind of jump in and do that, which is kind of exciting. So, in any case, I'm excited to see what everybody produces. But remember, day 0. And so, real quick, back to here. Day 0 for the sticker stint is where you take the time to prepare. And so come up with those ideas. Do those things that robots can't do, right? Think about a topic. Do word lists and mind maps and brainstorming and write all over everything and do free writing and free drawing and all that type of stuff. And I'm actually going to post a series of things over the next day or two where I talk about how to do that type of stuff. And I'd love to hear your practices as well. And so in preparation for that, if you guys want to leave in the comments, what are your practices? What are your procedures? What are your activities? What are the things that you do to generate those ideas, to generate the creativity? And I'll tell you some of the ones that I do. But I'd love to hear that in the comments of this video because I'm going to make several videos kind of coming up. Part of day 0 as we kind of approach in the next 9 or 10 days, the beginning of sticker stint. Anyway, so you guys are awesome. Thanks for hanging out. I will let you know in the community tab of my channel what Josh and I decide as far as him recovering or me grabbing some guests if I can get some other people on there or whatever. But I'll still be posting stuff. Josh will heal at some point in time. He's been seeing the doctors and stuff, and they've got him on things, and so he'll be back. In any case, I'm going to go back to... Nope, never mind. I'm just going to go back to this. And we'll catch you guys later. I am out.
This is Illuminati.